Hello and welcome to Pitt Street Research. My name is Stuart Roberts and I'm one of the co-founders of our firm. And joining me today from Melbourne on the afternoon of Friday, the 7th of July 2023, is Mr. Adam Guskich, who's the co-founder of Medigrowth Australia Proprietary Limited. Adam, good afternoon and well done on creating such a great business.
Thank you very much, Stuart. It's great to be here and looking forward to having a chat.
Right. So purpose of this conversation is Pitt Street Research has recently done some research on your company, which is still private. We've evaluated the opportunity for what you do in the medicinal cannabis space, and our research is now available for you for investors to look at. You're raising capital at the moment on a crowdfunding platform. Talk to us about the capital needs of Medigrowth Australia, and then we'll talk about the business.
Absolutely. So yes, we are looking to raise capital, and that's very much really to scale up our business. We've spent now several years building what we believe is a very strong investor platform, built on full licensing from the Office of Drug Control, products in market, distribution centre up and operational, telehealth platform freshly launched in more recent months. So we're really at a stage now where we are ready to hit the ground running, and the capital will help on all of those things to push and scale our business, and equally to help our clinical trials pipeline, which is also up and running and really is the long-term goal for our business to develop registered medicines in the cannabinoid medicine space.
Right. So let's talk about the business model. There's all sorts of companies doing all sorts of things in the cannabis and hemp space. Strategically, you've made the decision to focus on distributing third-party product rather than cultivating or manufacturing your own. And you're working on getting clinical data to show the utility of the products that you've developed. Talk to us about the strategic decision around that yourself and your co-founder, Todd McClellan, went through.
It's been an interesting journey. I mean, we've been involved in the industry. We registered our company here in Australia in 2017, so we're veterans in the industry now for an industry that was only legalised in 2016 here in Australia. And Todd, my co-founder at Medigrowth here, is a Canadian expat, even though he's been living here in Australia for 25 odd years and married a good Australian girl. But has still a very good connection to that part of the world and to probably the epicenter of medicinal cannabis.
Basically, the capital of the world cannabis industry has been Toronto in recent years, just because the regulatory framework has been so helpful in Canada.
Absolutely. And it gave us a very good insight to the broad sort of global market, and as you say, really the epicenter of that global market coming out of North America. And a lot of lessons to be learned over or out of that part of the world, which was really a lot of capital going into a whole host of different companies within the supply chain. But what we started to see over the evolving years was really an overcapitalisation and an oversupply of cannabis and within the cultivation supply chain arena. So for us, we saw the opportunity to really look at how can we position here in Australia under a very tightly regulated pharmaceutical oversight through the Therapeutic Goods Administration. How can we differentiate from other parts of the world that are focused on adult use cannabis, for example, or a medicinal framework that hasn't really gone through the full robust scientific rigour that certainly Australian prescribers require and insist on in their prescribing habits. So for us, right from the beginning, we saw an opportunity for looking to bring that quality clinical data to the products that we're selling and offering to patients and to prescribers. And hopefully that will translate to long-term opportunities within registered medicine frameworks as we look to really leverage that clinical data.
Right. So you've avoided the boom bust of the cultivators. What you're leveraged to is the fact that the legitimate demand from patients for cannabis medicines is shooting the lights out in Australia right now. We've seen enormous increases in the number of patients on the special access scheme, and for your business, from a standing start a year ago, you're growing now at something like 25% month on month.
We are indeed. Our average sort of monthly growth has been, I think 30 up towards 30% over the past 12 months. And we are seeing a genuine demand. We're seeing it just in our own inquiry, our multiple distribution channels that we're working within, and from our direct distribution centre. We are seeing the growth. We're having looking at the broad Australian market, there's no doubt that the industry is rapidly accelerating. And it's evidenced not only in the data for the access pathways, so patient access pathways through the special access scheme, but probably equally the authorised prescribers who are probably making up the lion's share of prescriptions and patient access here in Australia. And those numbers for Australian GPs and Australian specialists are growing quite rapidly as well, albeit a still relatively small number or small percentage of total Australian practitioners. But that's where we see an opportunity for our growth, is really as that momentum is pushing forward on authorised prescribers, as more clinical data comes on board and more medical practitioners are being convinced of the legitimacy of cannabis as a medicine, we see those authorised prescriber numbers continuing to increase at the rate that they have, which since inception has been not far off 10,000% increase in authorised prescribers from right back to legalisation, and most of that's happened in the last couple of years. So
right. So you've got you're doing your bit as well as other companies to unlocking these pathways so patients can get access to medicine. What really excited me when I was talking about your opportunity is you've chosen telehealth as a way to be able to connect up patients with authorised prescribers. Share with us how that's going.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a relatively new initiative for Medigrowth, but that was born out of necessity, really, because we were finding that we were being contacted quite regularly by patients or potential patients looking for more information on who to speak to, how they go about the access of medicinal cannabis, or at least having the opportunity to speak to someone who has the requisite experience. And in many cases, that was quite a clunky process. What we really wanted to achieve with Haiku Health, our telehealth platform, was a seamless experience for patients with no barriers to access, or at least no barriers to having those conversations. So right now, patients 365 days a year can jump onto the Haiku Health website, make an appointment, speak to a qualified authorised prescriber of medicinal cannabis on the same day, and in most cases within less than 2 hours. And that's been game-changing, I think, for patients, because it really does give them the opportunity to have the confidence to have the support by the medical practitioners, which often doesn't happen in a local GP setting. And it may not be because the GP doesn't have the intent, but often it's because they don't necessarily have the confidence and the training based on some additional training that comes with that authorised prescribing status from the TGA.
Right. So solving a very important need here, and the upside of that is huge. I mean, 7 years into legalised medicinal cannabis in Australia, and a lot of people are aware of the utility that CBD in particular can be put to. What's impressive about you is that you're actually working on your own clinical data to show that the products you are distributing are medical grade and actually potentially approvable by the TGA as medicines, rather than just tolerated under the special access scheme. Talk to us in particular about the autism study that you and your co-investigators are running.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, bringing that clinical data has been so important, and it was again born from necessity, because what we were seeing in the early stages of our product distribution was a whole host of medical practitioners asking the question, well, where's the data?
Yeah, and let's face it, there's still a bit of a stigma around cannabis medicine in some circles, right?
Well, I think decreasing. I'd still agree to a degree in certain sectors, but it's vastly decreased from certainly back to 2017 when we started, and we're seeing more and more legitimacy, and I think the hunger from academia, from research institutions, from government to be involved in legitimising the research to bring to the broader medical population is evidence of that. And that's really how the autism trial has come together. Medigrowth has a very strong collaboration with Deakin University, and in fact a co-located research facility with Deakin as well. And it's been quite a evolution of relationship. It started with plant science research in our co-located greenhouse and has evolved into some clinical work, initial clinical work, and now into some quite serious clinical work on the paediatric autism trial, which is being led by a group of team members there at Deakin, including some members of our research advisory committee. And it's investigating Medigrowth CBD on 5 to 12-year-old children with autism and looking at behavioural and neurodevelopmental challenges within that patient cohort. And I think the importance of that is that there have been other studies on autism and in fact on many other indications for utilising medicinal cannabis, but much of the quality of the clinical data hasn't quite been fully resolved. So this trial is a randomised crossover trial, placebo-controlled, double-blind, gold standard in terms of its HREC, Human Research Ethics Committee approvals. So it gives the end result the full legitimate answer that doctors are looking for in terms of progressing that particular trial into follow-on, phase. Right.
So in our research, we looked at some of the evidence from other studies that medicinal cannabis can be useful in treating autism. Amongst other things, seems to improve the symptomology in some way. More ability for folks to interact normally, less outbursts, that sort of thing. What are our primary endpoints in this study, and when can we expect to get data?
We're just coming into phase 2 in the coming weeks. So it kicked off at the start of 2023. And by the end of the year, we should be completed the actual study, phase 1 and 2 studies. Interim data should be released in October. And it's very much investigating those behavioural and neurodevelopmental challenges that we see across the spectrum. And the autism spectrum disorder has a wide range of disorder, from quite high functioning to quite low functioning. And what you say is right. The behavioural issues, again, is something that we've seen on our unapproved medicine distribution. Many doctors prescribing CBD and with very good results in many cases on reducing anxiety, helping with outbursts, helping with behaviour, and that's very much the focus of this particular study. Right.
Now, moving on from that, we've got cachexia as an interesting second indication. The muscle wasting associated with cancer therapy, for example. And I'm suspecting that won't be till next year. But talk to us about what you hope to achieve in that study.
Yeah. So again, that's born from the collaboration with Deakin. So working with under the Medigrowth and Deakin Research Advisory Committee, we've been looking at cachexia, the wasting syndrome, which is often particularly associated with advanced cancer care. And there is a strong palliative care unit within Deakin University. And what we're really looking to achieve there is taking a cannabis approach to a care model that we recognise is already working within anorexia and cancer care. We're seeing it regularly prescribed within that world. Now we need to just sort of take it to the next level under clinical trial programs to really establish that robust clinical evidence. Interestingly, with cachexia, it's a very complex syndrome. It's something that is unresolved for most patients, particularly within their cancer care. And 80-odd% of cancer patients will develop cachexia over their treatment journey. And when you look at the global cancer stats, which are incredibly alarming, the opportunity for real impact in patient care is immense, as is the potential commercial opportunity for any companies out there that can make a meaningful impact in that world. And probably secondary to that is within that broad cancer and advanced cancer care, it's become increasingly recognised that there's a far greater treatment span for many cancer patients. So cancer patients are living longer in many cases, and many cases living with cancer rather than being terminal. So the ability for cannabis beyond simply cachexia treatment, but just for broad quality of life
and maintenance of what's been achieved with the underlying therapies, basically.
Absolutely, and that's again been witnessed throughout many of the hospitals here in Australia who have active medicinal cannabis programs for cancer patients, because it has been resolved that there is real and positive impact for many patients that are working through chemotherapy and quite exhausting treatment programs.
Right. So in our research, we look at the investment environment for cannabis mainly from a public company perspective. And there's about 15 to 20 public companies in Australia that are involved in cannabis in some way. It's fair to say that 2022 was not a great year. But as I point out, this sector, when it busts, it also booms. You could make the case that we're coming up to cannabis 4.0, where the companies with serious clinical data will benefit from the next stage of the journey. Now, contrast that with you. You're still private, but it's fair to say that your underlying business is in boom mode rather than bust mode. So I suspect now's a good time to be raising capital privately ahead of the public markets coming back to favour with cannabis.
Absolutely. Look, we're very bullish broadly on the market opportunity for smart companies within the cannabis sector. And there are so many positions within the cannabis industry that I think the problem often when people are comparing medicinal cannabis or cannabis companies per se in the listed market is that often they're compared as a collective. When many
you've got cultivators on one hand and data companies on the other, and people doing informatics. They're all lumped in together.
Absolutely. And for us, we continue to say that there are many opportunities for Medigrowth as we move forward. We've achieved a huge amount of milestones to get to where we are now. We're fully licensed by the Office of Drug Control. We have products in market. We have the telehealth option up and running. We have the clinical trials and observational trials and a host of other things that we're working on in the research world. And really now we're ready to fully realise the opportunity and move forward. And we often look at cannabis companies, and us as a good example, where we continue to refer to ourselves as a medicinal cannabis company, when really I believe we should be referred to as a medicinal cannabis biotech, and really starting to look at a world where we're developing medicines, not cannabis medicines, because ultimately that's our goal, to register medicines for particular indications that are no different to any other medicines that are prescribed by a doctor for a patient, that have the opportunity to go on a PBS subsidy, and ultimately patients are winning out of that scenario where they get the best option in medicine at an access point of price that is available and agreeable.
Let's pick up what you were talking about there with the importance of clinical data. The landmark transaction so far in the cannabis medicine space is when Jazz Pharmaceuticals in America bought GW Pharmaceuticals, London-based company, and it was a transaction in the billions. And what did Jazz see? What they wanted a company that could jump through all those clinical trial hoops with an FDA-approved product, and that would get approved in other jurisdictions. And in fact, it's one of only a couple of products that are actually reimbursed and properly approved here. That's the game you intend to play with Medigrowth long term, right?
Absolutely. It's how we look to, and how we're working on a business strategy here to differentiate beyond a pure play medicinal cannabis company. And currently, the vast majority of medicines here in Australia in medicinal cannabis are unapproved medicines mandated by the TGA, which is a sustainable business model in its own right. But I think as we start to see companies really driving home the clinical data, companies like ourselves, where there is the option for registered medicines for specific indications, that's where companies really start to build that defensive moat around them and have a defendable business versus the current market that we're in. So we're very excited by the way we're positioned in the market to be able to start to achieve some of those goals over the midterm.
You and I were introduced through a mutual friend at Deakin University, but most investors won't know you. After that meeting, you shipped me a case of your foundation product that preceded this business, Marku beer. It's a hemp beer. It wasn't bad. And so tell us about Marku and some of the other entrepreneurial activities you've done before Medigrowth.
Absolutely. Look, Marku was something that was co-founded also by Todd McClellan, Medigrowth co-founder as well. And it was something that was really born out of our broad interest in the cannabis and hemp sector, right back into even pre-Medigrowth days when we were discussing the broad market opportunities. And we were inspired by the craft beer revolution that was going on around us, inspired by the cannabis industry, and probably one of our learnings from that was partnering with good people, and we partnered with a brewery. We established the branding and the concept, and we launched really with my main goal of that particular beer being nationally distributed under Dan Murphy's, and we achieved that in a relatively short space of time. So it was something that I was very proud of to be involved in, and equally has allowed us to continue our journey, because we since exited our particular share in that business, and that has partially funded our continued sort of growth in Medigrowth. So it's been a very interesting journey in terms of where we've started and where we are now, and where we believe we'll be in the future. And among other things, my business background goes right through from automotive wholesale and retailing for many, many years, working within a family business, and in later years some property development. And now I think I can humbly say that I'm a veteran within the cannabis industry. So I've been varied in my roles, but what I do have is a very, very strong passion for what I'm involved in, and that's really building Medigrowth into what I know it can be, and that's a global business that I think everyone should be excited about.
Right. Well, folks, there you have it. Medigrowth Australia and Adam Guskich with Todd McClellan. A very interesting opportunity. Check out the research that we've prepared as an evaluation piece, and take a look at the potential of this interesting company. Adam Guskich, thank you for joining Pitt Street Research.
Thank you so much, Stuart. And if I can just close by saying, if anyone's interested in having a further look at Medigrowth and investment opportunities, medigrowth.com.au is the website. You're welcome to have a look there. And equally, I'm more than happy to have a chat to anyone in person should they wish. Thanks.
Thank you.